What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you my next 8 reviews. A video I like to make every couple of months or so, just to let people know what I've got going on, what to expect in the near future, and occasionally to account for any shifts in my schedule, which is a little bit of this video, because the last time I spoke on this subject was actually back in December. And at that time, a few of the games in that video didn't have release dates, some things have been delayed since then. So we are certainly due for an update, especially given how insanely packed the month of March is. In fact, the vast majority of the games on this list are games that are releasing in March. That said, there are a couple of games on the list here that I have spoken about several times as they have been the subject of numerous delays or were awaiting a release date. So in the case of those titles, I'm going to kind of just breeze over them a little bit because I've talked about them so many times that at this point there's just not much else to say outside of having it fully in my hands for a review. With that in mind, let's kick this video off by talking about what is currently in progress, and that is Nioh 2. I have not forgotten about it, and you guys will hopefully see that review next weekend, as I am currently through, I would say, the most difficult portions of it, and at this point I am just grinding the New Game Plus modes because I want to get to Dream of the Neo, which is the final New Game Plus, so I can check out the content that opens up there, such as the Underworld, which I know is a big part of Nioh 2, but that is going pretty quickly. I'm already most of the way through New Game 1, and I have very much, I would say, reached the sort of end game grind where it's all just about maxing out equipment and gaining levels. Now, immediately after I finish Nioh 2, we get started on this particular list, and in between Nioh 2 and the beginning of all the launches that start in March, I'm going to try to fit in one smaller title, which just so happens to be Gears Tactics, a TRPG set in the Gears of War franchise that I have heard very good things about. I haven't played it for myself, and I play a lot of TRPGs, and people have been telling me I need to play this one, as it came out a little bit before I started really doing reviews full time, so I'm excited to take a dive into it while I've got a little bit of free time, but that does bring us to the mini releases of March, you see. Kicking it off on March 4th, we have the recently delayed The Thaumaturge title, one of the ones I've talked about many times. It puts us in the role of a thaumaturge in 1905 Warsaw, Poland, where we'll be tracking down the occult and demonic salutors who attach themselves to flawed individuals, causing all sorts of problems. It looks great. I'm excited to play it. It was supposed to be out on the 22nd, but got delayed until the 4th very recently, and given the short time of the delay, I expect it'll probably be the final one. Almost immediately after this, on March 7th, we have Zoria, the Age of Shattering, a squad-based tactical RPG that's going to put us in command of 4 heroes, where you'll explore a world taken over by demonic corruption and its accompanying hellspawn. It promises to offer things like a craft and resting system, base management, class-based features like certain abilities allowing you to get through terrain obstacles as a certain class, to say just a few things about it. I have gotten to play a little bit of this via a demo and things like that, and there's actually a public one available even now, and I will say what I've experienced of the game in its early stages is very janky, and while they've certainly had plenty of time to clean those things up from the time that demo was available up until launch, I think the jury is still out on whether or not that manages to be a satisfying experience, but overall I would certainly say it has some potential, and I hope they manage to pull it off. Not long after that, on March 14th, we have Crown Wars: The Black Prince, a game I recently got to experience via the Steam Next Fest demo that was available. This title is another TRPG, this one putting us in the shoes of an alternative history timeline involving the 100 Years' War in 14th century France. It does have some, I would say, light fantasy elements as well, though we'll be managing our domain, building up our base and our teams of people that we'll send out on various combat missions to take care of problems for us in what I have to say was very fun and engaging turn-based combat, and as someone who loves these types of games, it is right up my alley. The demo of it that I played involved a bunch of different classes, some with like animal companions, etc., a lot of the hallmarks of what make those tactical combat encounters great, so I'm looking forward to this one quite a bit. And then, literally the next day after Crown Wars, on March 15th, we have the release of Outcast: A New Beginning. This is actually a remake of a 1999 game, which is known for sort of pioneering the open world, non-linear action adventure, apparently being remade by a lot of the original team, and it looks to have a lot of gameplay that facilitates a pretty open approach to things like movement with a glider, a jetpack, pretty standard action-adventure combat that I've seen, but also promises, of course, a non-linear story, freedom of exploration, etc. So I think it might be a fun game to check out, which is naturally why I am doing so. But then on March 22nd, we have, I would say, probably one of the biggest games early in the year, which is Dragon's Dogma 2, which is shaping up to be a pretty big improvement of the original title. Dragon's Dogma 1 was a bit of a cult classic in some ways, having a really robust combat system that I would say was let down by a lot of cut content and a general bit of jank. Dragon's Dogma 2 seems to be aiming to fix a lot of those things while keeping a lot of the core concepts and things that mattered from the original, while adding new mechanics, new approaches to the storyline, even though the overall story should be relatively set in stone due to the nature of the universe that you'd be aware of if you played Dragon's Dogma. It looks like they're still trying to do some new things there. We're also getting the Beastren race, which will be new. It looks like elves as well even, and the pawn system is even seeing an expansion. So there's a lot to be excited for about Dragon's Dogma 2. I'm really excited to check it out for myself, and it's definitely one of the big games I'm ready for this year. And then to bring an end to March, we have Geneforge 2 Infestation launching on March 27th, which is a remaster to the original Geneforge 2, which is a much older CRPG, and CRPGs are kind of my main thing, so knowing that these have been getting remade, I've been waiting on them a little bit, as I plan on covering the entire Geneforge series, as well as the Avernum series, and probably a few more by the same developer even at some point, so the release of this one is a convenient time to check out that second title, but is really just the beginning of games I want to cover from that publisher. Geneforge 2 centers around the Shapers, just like the rest of the Geneforge series, which are wizards that can shape life into existence, and I really enjoyed the writing and premise of the first title, so I'm excited to dive back into more of it. This was another game that actually had a demo available during the last Steam Next Fest, so I got to enjoy a little bit of it firsthand, though if you're familiar with the Geneforge series, you would already pretty much know what to expect. And again, I've spoken on this one quite a bit, so I'll leave it there. But that does bring us to our final entry, though this one likely won't be until April at the very least, since realistically some of the reviews from March I'm sure will bleed into April as it is, but that is none other than Morrowind. I cover a lot of old games with obscure mechanics, and many people have asked me to play Morrowind. I would say second only to requests to play Grim Dawn, which I will also get to, as that has another expansion due out this year, which will be a convenient time to tackle that one. Though Morrowind in particular is a game that I'm sure needs no introduction, and I likely couldn't tell you anything about it you probably don't already know to some degree, at least in passing, which is why a video covering it more in depth, to add to honestly the many that are already on YouTube, is exciting for me, because while I have played Morrowind, I've never actually gotten around to finishing it. And I think a full-blown review in my usual sort of retrospective style, talking about things like Open Morrowind, etc., which I'll probably wind up using, will go a long way outside of just my personal enjoyment of finally wrapping up my experiences with Morrowind that I've honestly just never gotten through. And while that wraps up pretty much everything I want to cover in this particular video, I do think it's also worth mentioning that after March, the number of games that have a release date that I actually want to cover drops off significantly. There's still a lot of stuff set to release in 2024 sometime, but none of it has release dates as it stands at the time of this video. Though I imagine many of them will be getting full-blown release dates come like the Summer Games Fest, etc. type shows where they'll likely announce these things and ramp up the marketing. But right now, I kid you not, of I would say the almost 25-ish new releases I plan on covering this year, only 4 of them have a set-in-stone release date after March, which I only mentioned towards the end of this video because that means I'll likely be getting to a bunch of older titles in the interim, which is what I normally do. As towards the beginning of the year, I always talk about the older games that I want to get to as well as the new releases. So it looks like after March, that will likely start to ramp up a little bit, and it'll be a lot of older games as we wait for the release dates for the newer stuff. So I think that'll make the back half of the year particularly interesting because as of now, we don't really know what that's going to look like. Either way though, the next month or two will certainly be packed with all sorts of stuff, mostly in March, and I certainly hope you're looking forward to it as much as I am. But that is certainly going to do it for this particular video. So I certainly hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think about all these titles, if you're excited for any of the reviews, etc. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, as it is what allows me to review and cover all these games. So thank you again. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.